Here at Studio 32 in downtown Chicago, we are joined on this day after this historic announcement, Pope Leo XIV from right here in Chicago, and we are joined by Father Patrick Gilger. He is an assistant professor at Loyola University. He's a graduate of Creighton University, Nebraska, right?
Yep.
All right, yeah, all right, and trained in philosophy and theology in addition to sociology. So you bring some perspective here, because we're all trying to process this news. You've been doing a great job of kind of helping us navigate this unfamiliar territory. But for those who are just seeing you for the first time, Father Gilger, your initial reaction to this news about Pope Leo XIV?
If I had to sum it up in one word, it would be gratitude. Like, I feel very grateful that somebody from the United States of America has been judged worthy by the cardinal electors of being named Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. I mean, maybe I can put it this way. I always think of the Pope as somebody who's from somewhere else, like he's from elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And that distance kind of gives me both a sense of admiration, like, wow, you know, from all the way over there, but also it gives me a sense of safety, because I'm like, okay, if holiness comes from far away, I really don't have to worry about it that much, you know, like, it doesn't have to get at me that much, it doesn't have that much of a claim on me. And look, like, I can no longer use that as an excuse. I mean, this guy grew up in Dalton, here in Chicago, he's eaten an Italian beef. Like, he's gone to, you know, have hot dogs, right? Like, he knows what a deep dish pizza is. He's a Sox fan. Like, okay, like, I'm a baseball fan. Like, I like dipped Italian beef. Like, right. Okay, no more excuses for me. If I also am called, he was called, I am also called to consider holiness in my own life. It
really, really humanizes him too. Do you think that Americans, you know, this is the first American Pope, will have a similar reaction to you, American Catholics, like, wow, hey, this is pretty close to home here?
Yeah, I'm hopeful, but I can't say I'm confident, you know, so, and that's okay. Like, we will see, you know, God can work miracles and may do something special with us. But you know as well as I do what the state of the American Catholic Church is. The American Catholic Church is a holy institution that's full of wonderful people working very hard. It's also an institution that has at times been a little wealthy and a little afraid. And afraid of, like, the new things that may be brought about by God. And so we'll see really whether or not Pope Leo is able to respond to the fears and the hopes that all these different constituencies of the American Catholic Church have. The ethnic constituencies, the religious constituencies, the ideological constituencies. I think he can, but that's a question for us, not just for him.
Okay, there's that phrase, first impressions are everything. Okay. In my mind, when I was watching live yesterday, right over there, yeah. With Michael Murphy, as you know, he seemed to meet that moment, his first, you know, giving this first impression of the world. What did you think of that, his initial address?
I agree with you. I think he did meet the moment really well. I was so stunned at the name Robertus. And I know maybe I shouldn't have felt this way, but, like, you know, they say it in Latin, Robert in Latin, Robertus, and I thought, wait a minute, that doesn't sound quite right. Like, it's too American of a name, you know, like Pope Bobby. Like, what the hell? Yeah. But, like, all of that is so amazing to me. So we can see all of that there being really, really beautiful. And he steps out onto the balcony, and then there was that moment where he's just overwhelmed. Like, you can see his face soften and his Adam's apple move, where the tears start to come, and he held them back, you know, just fine, right? But I felt that very much moving in myself. I started crying. And I felt very grateful that somebody like this was there. His speech was really wonderful too. I'd be happy to talk about it, but maybe that's too much.
We can get into that. One thing I am curious about, speaking of speeches, is, so I watched the movie Conclave, right? And we're reporting that his brother told me, several media outlets that he watched it too. And if memory serves, it's been a few weeks or months since I've seen the movie, but I do remember when they depicted the inner workings of what happens in the conclave, the cardinals involved do make a little speech, right? And when you try to surmise, and I know this is guesswork, what could have unfolded in that conclave that led to now Pope Leo being elevated into that position, do you have any guesses about what kind of swayed things in his direction?
You know, I'm not.
Or is that too hard to say?
Well, I don't want to over-speculate, right? But we do have a few pieces of data points that we might use to extrapolate from. So one of the things we could say is that the conclave itself, there are no speeches that are given inside the halls of the Sistine Chapel,
Okay.
other than from Cardinal Cantalamessa, who was the papal preacher. So he gave a long 45-minute reportedly sermon, speech, meditation for the cardinals there to consider what they were doing. Other than that, nothing happened there. All of the speeches were given in what's called these general election, this general congregation that happens beforehand. But what he may have said there, we don't know for sure. But look, I mean, a man who was elected after 2 days of a conclave, he doesn't know he's going to be elected, he doesn't have a long time to write. Probably what we heard on the balcony is similar to the kind of intervention he made in the general congregation.
And for those who may have missed it live, or like me, I didn't understand half of it. Can you sum up what the essence of that message?
Yeah. So he said a number of very important things. He began with an address of peace. His first words out of his mouth were, "Peace to the world, peace to be with all of you." And this is this global recognition. One of the things that stood out to me very clearly is it seemed to me he was really trying to synthesize in his own way and with his own American accent the gifts that the last 5 popes have really brought to the church. So very briefly, you can see in that first address of peace, that's very much a message of John the 23rd. John the 23rd's most famous encyclical was called Pacem in Terris, Peace in the World, very much the same. And then we have Paul VI. His most famous intervention was Evangelii Nuntiandi, a message of joy and of greeting, of newness. And he said the same kind of message of joy there from Pope Leo. And then we have John Paul II, the famous scene of John Paul II having been elected Pope, marching around St. Peter's Square with his crozier saying, "Do not be afraid." And then we have Pope Leo doing the very similar things. Evil will not win. There is no reason for fear. And then we have his wearing of the beautiful red garments and the stole in a nod to Pope Benedict. And then, of course, his explicit references to Pope Francis,
Yes.
Grazie Papa Francesco.
Yes.
And then to synodality and walking with. He's taking all of these messages from our last 5 popes, the best gifts that they have given to the popes, to the church, and really sharing them again from the balcony.
I want to get one other history lesson from you here while we have you. In Blaise Cupich's statement, the last statement that Blaise Cupich gave before he entered the conclave, he referred to, I'm going to botch the exact words, but something to the effect of the successor to St. Peter. Okay? Correct that first of all, but what does this actually mean? A descendant or a successor to St. Peter himself?
Yeah. No, so for Roman Catholics, you may be aware, right? We really believe that the Pope stands in what we call apostolic succession to the original Pope, the first Pope, St. Peter, the one to whom Jesus gave the keys to the kingdom. And so we've traced, we have lineages of Pope to Pope, person to person, man to man over these 2,000 years since Peter himself was named Pope. And we have this guy now standing in this apostolic line of apostolic succession.
That's so wild. So like when the news outlets yesterday are interviewing his older brother,
yeah,
I can't wrap my mind around that. So like if I'm a Catholic and I'm talking to his brother, like you're kind of one step away from this saintly figure.
I think that the expression on your face right now, Anthony, is I think a perfectly apt summary of what we sometimes call the scandal of Christianity.
Okay.
Because not just now, but when Christianity was first coming onto the scene, when the first human beings themselves in the city of Ephesus were called Christians, there was a real scandal that someone who was hung on a tree, crucified, could also be called divine, right? Divinity and suffering do not go together. They do not cross, right? And another way for us to imagine that is that the divine is distant from us. It is transcendent. It is apart. And the scandal of Jesus's particularity, that he was a human being with a mother and an adopted father, and cousins and relatives that he knew, and he was trained as a carpenter. He worked with his hands, that he was a human being with friends who laughed and ate. He cooked breakfast on the shores of the Sea of Galilee for his friends over a charcoal fire with fish there to feed them. Come, have breakfast, he said. That scandal of particularity is part of what makes Christianity, I think, both beautiful and very difficult. Like, how can the God of all creation be so particular? And the same kind of question that I feel that you're asking really beautifully about, our new Pope Leo XIV. How can a man from Chicago
who's eating an Italian beef,
hopefully a dipped one, otherwise, right. But that's how can this be possible that he is from here? But I think that's part of, to come back to the challenge to holiness. No. We are invited to take up that same call. The way St. Peter felt it in his life, that he was challenged by this man who looked at him with a peculiar gaze and said, "Come and follow me." Other people said no. He said yes. We're grateful that, this wonderful man, Robert Francis Prevost, now Pope Leo XIV, also said yes.
I asked you this question earlier, but I want to get your thoughts again on it, and that is, what do you think the local impact will be here in terms of, you had an anecdote about a since shuttered parish that he was a part of as a younger man. And then I was wondering about just like, I don't know if these are logistical questions, or are people going to be flocking to his old school? Are they going to be flocking to his childhood home? What is the local impact going to be here?
I have high hopes that the impact will be strong. But the reality is that we live in a world where human beings themselves, we ourselves, get to decide what the impact of things will have on us, what that impact will be. And the same will happen here. I hope that because he is from Chicago, there'll be a little more, force to the message and a little more opportunity for it to penetrate our hearts. Because as you know, I heard you guys talking earlier, you're going to talk about, cell phone use amongst children,
yes.
Right? So what do those things do? What does social media do? It fills our minds and hearts and bodies, in our neurons themselves, with all kinds of images, messages. And sometimes those messages are linked, and sometimes they are conflicting. And so many of the mental health crises that we see amongst young people today, I see in my own students teaching at Loyola, come from this constant conflicting barrage of messages.
Yes.
And what that does, as a sociologist myself, what that does to us is it puts these multiple voices in our heads, and we don't know how to respond to all of them at the same time. Mm-hmm. It makes us a person who is confused and jumbled inside. And so when we come to somebody like Pope Leo, we have a chance to allow a man from our own place to have a voice to us that might bring some coherence to those mixed messages that we're always getting. This message from someone we trust, and not all those voices are trustworthy, but this one, if we can trust this man, is a voice that will tell us two things. One, you are loved. You are loved, I am loved. And out of that belovedness, we then have the courage to say, hey, I haven't always lived up to that belovedness as well as I might have wanted to. That's Catholicism in a nutshell. Mm-hmm. We are created as good and loved and chosen and called, and we don't always respond to the call. If we ourselves, if the Catholic Church in Chicago is willing to take up that call from this new man who's also from our place, then we can really do something beautiful, and maybe people themselves will be invited to come back to St. Mary's in Dolton, where he grew up, and see this beautiful place and revivify it with our presence, not just as a building.
Is that the building that has since shuttered as a parish, or is that a different facility?
Exactly right. Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
So will you get folks updated on what? So he led a parish, or he was a member of a parish that has since been shuttered.
As a child, where he went to Mass, here in Chicago, the parish has been closed down. And it's sad, and it's okay. This mm-hmm. is where we are in the church these days. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure the people who used to go there feel the pain of the loss of their parish. I felt that in my own ways, the loss of particular communities. But that's what happens as people decide that they are no longer going to affiliate with the Roman Catholic Church for good or for bad reasons. And they make those decisions. People are free. They can make those decisions.
Is the building itself still there? The
building is there, and it's in moderate disrepair.
Okay. But could you see Blaise Supich being like, okay, the Holy Father, this is where he earned his stripes. We're going to revitalize this place. Could you see that happening?
I never want to speak for the Cardinal, but I would
You might get in trouble.
I would love to see him consider it, and I'm sure he will consider it. What that happens, though, that can be up to the people of the church, the Catholic Church of Chicago. We can take up that task to say, you know what we want to do to honor this man? Let's build this.
Okay, last question before we let you go, Father Gilger. Is he going to visit Chicago?
I'm hopeful. I'm not confident. Pope Francis
He never visited Argentina, right?
Never visited Argentina, and I think it was intentional. You know,
Okay.
Francis wanted to be. He visited all the places that nobody else wanted to go to. I'm sure he himself would have loved to go back to Buenos Aires and to visit his place and his people there. And I'm sure that Pope Leo will want to visit Peru and will want to visit Chicago.
He's got to say hi to his older brother.
He has to come see it, and he's got to go to a Sox game again.
right.
You know, he's
I
gotta,
know. Sox need all the help they can get right
They
now.
definitely do.
Father
Definitely.
Gilger, so great to see you. It's been so nice to kind of have you as a resource through this whole process, and we hope to keep in touch and have you back often.
Thank you.